I'm not here for blessings. Jesus, you don't owe me anything.
Already paid the price.
More than anything that you can do.
Yes, Lord.
I just want you.
Yes, Lord, you, Lord.
And I'm sorry when I've just gone through the motions. I'm sorry.
Yes, Lord.
When I just sang another song, take me back to where we started. I open up my heart to you.
Yes, Lord. Yes, Jesus.
I'm sorry when I've come with my agenda. I'm sorry
Yes, Lord.
when I forgot that you're enough. Take me back to where we started. I open up my heart to you.
Yes, Lord, all of my heart, Lord. You can have all of my heart, Father. Yes, Lord.
Caught up in your presence.
Oh, the holy, holy presence.
And I just want to sit here at your feet.
Yes.
I'm caught up in this holy moment. I never want to leave.
Yes, Jesus.
Oh, I'm not here for blessings, no. 'Cause Jesus, you don't owe me anything. More than anything that you can do.
Yes.
I just want you.
Yes, Lord. Yes, Father. Just want you, Lord.
Nothing else, nothing else, nothing else will do. I just want you.
Yes.
Nothing else, nothing else, nothing else will do. I just want you. Nothing else, nothing else, nothing else will do. I just want you. Nothing else, nothing else, nothing else will do. We just want you. Nothing else, nothing else, nothing else will do. We just want you. Nothing else, nothing else, nothing else will do.
Yes. Yes, Father. Lord Jesus, I love you, Jesus. Lord, I love you, Father. Lord, I just want you, Lord. I just want you, Lord. And I want you, Lord. Lord, you can have all of my heart, Lord. Lord, align my heart with your little heart, Lord Jesus. Lord, I praise you and I honor you, Jesus. And I thank you, Father, for loving us, Father. For sending your Son to die on the cross for our sins, Father. For we can be
Caught
made
up
whole,
in your
Lord.
presence. And I just want to sit here at your feet.
Yes, Lord.
Caught up in this holy moment.
Yes.
I never want to leave. I'm not here for blessings.
Jesus.
Jesus, you don't owe me anything.
No, Father.
More than anything that you can do.
Yes.
I just want you.
Yes. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Father. Thank you,
Yes,
Jesus.
Lord. Hallelujah. Let's give the Lord a hand clap of praise. All right, we'll let Corena come on up and mind the Lord. I was supposed to teach tonight, but Tuesday I called Mom and I said, please have somebody, see if somebody can teach for me, because I was feeling absolutely awful Tuesday, but I'm 100% better than what I was feeling Tuesday. I couldn't even talk, so. But Corena said she was already working on something, so I said, Lord, please.
So if you all help me, or if I get off, because I'm just kind of put things together, it's probably not in order the way it needs to be, but we said that we'd talk about the rapture, so we'll do that. You know, a lot of times we talk about the Lord coming back, but actually there's 2 times he comes back.
Yes.
There's the rapture, and then there's the second coming. We want to be in the rapture. We don't want to have to end up going through the total part of tribulation. Rapture in the Hebrew means harpazo. It means taken away with a sudden force, caught or carried away. In 1 Thessalonians, let me find this here. In chapter 5, it says, "For yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord so cometh as a thief in the night. For when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them, as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. But ye, brethren, are not in darkness, that day should overtake you as a thief." And that's the reason I don't understand people that says that they're not interested in, you know, the end or it coming, because he tells us plain, we better not be deceived. We need to know this stuff. We need to know and be looking that day not overtake you as a thief, he says. "You are the children of light and the children of the day. You are not children of the night or darkness. Therefore, let us not sleep as do others, but let us watch and be sober." And then also in 1 Corinthians, now it's talking about the rapture here. It's not talking about, both these verses are talking about the rapture. It's not talking about the second coming of Jesus. "Behold, I show you a mystery. We shall not all sleep or die, but we shall all be changed in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the first trump, for the trumpet shall sound, and the dead shall be raised incorruptible, and we shall be changed. For the corruptible must put on incorruption, and this mortal must put on immortality." And so, and there's other, and we'll kind of go through some of the differences in the second coming. The second coming is actually when Jesus comes back at the end of the tribulation. And instead of like here, it talks about us, you know, being caught up in the air with him. He kind of comes as a thief in the night. When he comes the second time after the tribulation, he actually comes back to earth. And everybody sees him then. He comes to earth and sets his feet on the Mount of Olives, and it says the Mount of Olives then separates. And we'll go through all of that too. And so, if you don't, and I'm sure everybody's heard of the tribulation, 7 years tribulation, that will be at the end. It'll be the last 7 years of this age. And then Jesus comes back. But there's also the rapture, where the Lord, like we just read, will come and catch us up. And the dead in Christ will raise too. And then he changes us, our body. For some reason, the Lord wants our body. You know, I still don't understand that. Even though our soul and spirit, when we die, leaves automatically, and our body goes back to dust or whatever it does. But for whatever reason, he wants our body. He said the dead will rise, and then in the air, you know, and then he'll change us, like into his body that he had after he rose. But for whatever reason, you know, he wants our body. And a lot of people says, which the Lord can do anything, but they'll say, well, you know, people burns up, people does this, they do that. And the Lord made us to start with, so he can bring the body back. But it's just strange that the more they find out in science, like with DNA, it only takes a speck of DNA, because everybody's DNA is different, to actually, you can actually create you can be created again out of one speck of DNA that you can't even see. I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing the more you learn about the Lord and what He's done, especially with our bodies, it has to make you believe, because there is just no way in this world. And, and that's what can happen, because when our body is always out there, I don't care where it's at. I don't care if it's in the wind. I don't care if it's in the sea. I don't care what it is. Because of that one speck of DNA that he formed us out of. But anyway, that's beside the point. But anyway, so he comes back in, he meets us in the air, because in John, he told us that and I should have wrote that down exactly where that's at, but he said, if I go away, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, you may be also. Well, that goes against what, if you don't believe in the rapture, that goes against the second coming. The second coming, he comes at the end of tribulation. He comes to earth. And at the end of Armageddon, which is the last battle with the nations. And then at the end of tribulation, when he comes here on earth, he comes in judgment. In the rapture, he comes in love. He comes in to ransom us. But at the end of the tribulation, when he comes back the second time, like I said, he's going to be here on earth. And so how could it be that he told the disciples, when I'll go away, but I will come again to receive you unto myself, that where I am, you may be also? So the rapture, when he comes, we go back with him. Like he said, there's many mansions of what it, but at the second coming, and I'll show you that here in just a minute, in the rapture, he comes for the saints. When the second coming, he comes with the saints. We come back with him at the end of tribulation, and he sets up the 1,000-year millennial reign here on earth. And I know that's a lot. I mean, I know but there's completely two separate events. Now, the second coming, we can pretty well pinpoint when that is. It tells us when that is. In Revelation, as it goes all through the tribulation and at the end of tribulation, and then when he comes back. In the rapture, there is no time. There is no time frame. It's a mystery. It's whatever. But everybody has always known that it would be, before, or they thought it would be before the tribulation. So that we wouldn't have to go through it. And so there again, most people believe that he will come before the tribulation starts. I believe he comes in midpoint. I believe he comes in after the 3.5 years. Remember last week we talked about it looked like, even though tribulation starts with a peace treaty and all of this, at the middle of tribulation is when the Antichrist really takes over the nations and the real tribulation starts. Up to that point, yes, there has been judgments and there's been things that happen that's bad, but the real wrath of God doesn't start until the Antichrist reveals himself. And if you'll look back, and that's what a lot of people say is, well, the Lord has never allowed his people to go through his wrath. And that, as far as I can see, is true. Like he took care of Noah when he destroyed the world. Abraham and Lot, he got them out before he poured out his judgment. But when you look at Revelation, that first 3.5 years, it is not the wrath of God. It is judgments and it's things, but we go through that stuff now. Us just living here, we go through that stuff now, earthquakes, all this, all this stuff happening. But then when the Antichrist really reveals himself and starts, the tribulation, the real bad tribulation that the Bible talks about, that last 3.5 years, then the wrath of God, and there again, I'll read it to you here in just a minute, where it says, then those last bowls of wrath is God's wrath that they're pouring out. Up until then, it wasn't his wrath. It was just judgment. It was just stuff that happened, famines, wars, all this stuff. And so I believe that too. I believe that the Lord won't allow us to go through his wrath, but we could still go through that first 3.5 years, because that is not his wrath being poured out of the tribulation. Does that make any sense? Or that's my thinking.
People don't want to hear that a lot. We want to think that we're going to escape everything.
Right.
But the church has never escaped martyrdom.
Never.
And,
Even today.
even today, there are people dying for their faith.
Right.
Every one of the disciples
Right.
died for their faith.
Right.
So the church has never escaped that martyrdom. And Revelation even tells that there's going to be a people that's going to cry out. They're going to stand before God and say, how long until you avenge us?
Right.
Well, who do you think that is, guys? I believe that's people that's been martyred.
It is. It says that.
I mean, so, yeah, I do believe. But the thing of it is, the martyrdom is not the wrath of God.
No.
It's not.
No.
What seems to set off the wrath of God in my study is what's called the abomination of desolation.
It is.
When the Antichrist, after that 3.5 period of peace,
Right.
finally begins to push back against that peace treaty and say, no, actually, I'm going to do this. And he does an abomination in the temple.
Right.
And we don't know exactly what that's going to be, but we know what it was before.
Right.
It was when a pig was sacrificed
Right.
in the temple.
Right.
And it may be that again, it may be something different, but there's something about that act that really pushes
Right.
God's wrath to fall.
And don't you believe it's because he sets himself up as God? At that time, he says,
Thank you, Christ.
and he's in the temple,
Yeah.
God's holy temple. And and I believe, and of course he's going to sacrifice to gods or whatever, but the false prophet that's going to be with him also, I think, is an abomination. He sets him up in there like the Holy Spirit or whatever. And Jesus even said that when they asked him about the end time. He said, when you see the abomination of desolation, and that's what Daniel said, that's what the Antichrist is going to do. And when he does that, at that 3.5 year period, that's when full tribulation has started. And he told them, he said, you run to the mountains, you do whatever, because once you see that abomination, then you know that is my wrath then getting ready to be poured out. That's the reason I just truly believe that we're going to go up to that last 3.5 years, that first 3.5 years. But it's just, there's just a lot to it. I've got something, if I can see it here. In some old Jewish history, there was a man named Arrhenius, and he was a disciple of Polycarp. You probably know Polycarp from the song. They burned him at the stake or whatever. Polycarp was a disciple of John that actually wrote Revelation, that saw Revelation. And so Arrhenius, no doubt, saw John, he spoke to him or whatever, and Polycarp for sure did. And Polycarp was over Arrhenius. But Arrhenius here says, when in the end the church shall be suddenly caught up, and this will be the tribulation also. He says the tribulation will be after 6,000 years, which everybody has always thought that. We're in the 7,000 year now, because of the 2,000 years of history, going up to Noah, and then going up to Jesus, and then 2,000 years since Jesus, and now we're in that 7th day. And Irenaeus even said this. When we think about those early church leaders, we don't think of them as being men. We think, really? But it's just strange to me to read something that they actually said, somebody that actually talked to John. Like I said, this is not in the Bible, this is just in church history, that he said that it would be after the 6,000 years, but there would also be a rapture. So no doubt John had told him that, and told Polycarp that, and so he's saying that. He said that the Antichrist would come, after the 6,000 years. There was something else he was talking about, but they even knew that, and they even knew. You hear all the time, people says, well, they was always looking for the second coming of the Lord. Well, by this and by other church history, they knew that it was going to be 6,000 to 7,000 years. What they were looking for is the rapture, because nobody knew when that rapture was going to happen. Does that make any sense? So when you hear that, but we know we're in the last days. We know because John told, well, the Bible, everything it goes by. But even, like I said, Irenaeus, John had even told Polycarp and Irenaeus them, that's how he taught. So, and he talks about why at that time that John didn't know the name of the Antichrist, and the reason he used the numbers was because that Irenaeus said he thought that John did know who it was, but they were living under Rome then, and they were afraid of Rome. I mean, Rome was killing the Christians and all of that. And Irenaeus says he believes that it would really be somebody that was associated with the old Roman Empire, and that he was afraid at that time if they mentioned it, because even back then stuff was so political, that it would be some of their descendants that would be the Antichrist, and they just didn't say it. But I mean, it just brings everything so real when you read some of this old church history and stuff. But anyway, but they're two separate events. And like I said, for all they knew, the rapture could have been in their time. But it's, because there is no date for that. It's just that it's going to happen. And so he just tells us to watch and be ready. But now the second coming, we do know when that time frame is. But there again, going back to the wrath of God, like I said, I truly believe that no, we will not have to go through the bad part, but that's not to say that in that first 3.5 years, there's going to be still stuff going on. There's still going to be martyrs. Well, they are today, and there's still just going to be bad stuff, but we don't need to be deceived, because if not, and we're not looking for him, I don't know. Will we be left behind? I don't know. We just need to expect every day that he could come, and he could. And where we're at now in prophecy, he literally could come any day now for the rapture. I mean, that's just all there are to it. But in Isaiah 26:20 it says, and he's talking about the end time, "Come, my people, enter thou into thy chambers, and shut the doors about them. Hide thyself as if it were for a little moment, until the indignation be done with." In other words, he's saying, I will hide you during that last bad part. And then, and in 1 Thessalonians it says, "For God has not appointed us to wrath." And a lot of people, like I said, that believes that he's coming before the tribulation actually starts, they use that verse. But like we just explained, well, no, he don't appoint us to wrath, but that last 3.5 years is when his wrath is poured out. So, there again, I truly believe it's going to be midway that the rapture takes place. So is there any questions or anything until and we went over where Jesus said, when you see the abomination of desolation take place. And he was talking to the church then and to the Jews. And so when he said, when you see that desolation, when that starts happening, that last 3.5 years, that's it. And then here too, he was talking to the Jews. I believe that the Lord will hide, even though the Jews at that time didn't accept him, and they still don't to a large degree. They are some coming back to him in Israel, Messianic Jews. But even there, he was saying, Jews, when you see this, because in Matthew 24, when he's talking about the end time, a lot of it was directed toward the Jews, because that's where it's going to take place. The tribulation is going to be the Middle East, mostly Israel. And so when we look at stuff, we take a lot of it to but he's meaning them, when he says, when you see that happen, or anybody, but Jews, when you see that happen, whether they are saved or not, it was like he was protecting them. Flee to the mountains. Apparently they're not going to go in the rapture. It's the Jews that's not even saved. Because that's what the tribulation is for. The tribulation is to bring Israel back to him. At the end of tribulation, when he comes back, he says they will see him. They will ask him, where did you get the scars in your hand? He comes back to save them from the nations in Armageddon War. And so they come back to him. They finally see, you were our Messiah. The tribulation is absolutely not for the Gentiles, which is everybody that's not a Jew. It's for the Jewish people. And that's another reason I really think that he'll take us out, because the Gentile age, which is us, the church age is what that is, where he grafted us in, is over. There's going to be a time that the church age is over. And I truly, in my heart, believe, since the tribulation is for Israel, that's when the church age ends. That's when the rapture happens. And he takes us out. And then it's all focused on Israel. And, of course, the surrounding nations and all of that. Not to say that you can't get saved, but I think it will be very, very difficult, because of everything that's going on. One reason, too, that I believe, like I said, I truly believe it's midpoint, is because that last 3.5 years is when his wrath starts. In Revelation 15:1 it says, "And I saw another sign in heaven, 7 angels having the 7 last plagues, for in them," the last ones, the last plagues and the last wrath of God in that last 3.5 years, it says, "In those plagues and in those bows are filled up with the wrath of God." That's the first time it says that. That first 3.5 years things going on is not the wrath of God. Here he says in these last ones, they are. It is filled with the wrath of God. Am I making sense of what I'm saying about the wrath of God? Yes, we don't have to go through with it, but truly the wrath of God don't even start until that last 3.5 years, even though there's bad stuff that happens the first 3.5. And then in Revelation 16 it says, and I heard a great voice in the temple saying to the 7 angels, "Go your way and pour out the vials of the wrath of God." He keeps saying it. And those last bowls are wrath of God. Not before then, but in the last. And I just don't believe we'll be here at those last few years. And then in Revelation 14:7 it says, saying with a loud voice, "Fear God and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment is come." There again, those last 3.5 years. Not the things that happened before.
What do you say to people that believe in a post-tribulation rapture? One of the guys that I follow, it's Dr. Michael Brown. I've shared some of his posts and stuff. He's a Messianic Jew, and he absolutely believes that the church is going to see the full tribulation. He is convinced of it, and he says that the reason he believes that is because who's better to witness to the Jews and bring them back to Christ than the church?
Okay, a lot of reasons I don't believe, because there are people that believes that you don't go through any of it. Some believes midpoint, and some believes that we go through all of it. I just don't see a way of it being that, because there's too many other things that has to happen, and there's nowhere in the Bible in the end of Revelation where it talks about those things are going to happen. One of them is the judgment seat of Christ. That's going to happen, where the righteous people has to stand before him, give an account of everything that we've done and said, whatever. Now, there's also a great white throne judgment, which is for unsaved people and all of that, and that's a whole different, those two things are a whole totally different teaching. But the Bible tells us when the great white throne judgment is. It's at the end of tribulation before we go into the millennial 1,000-year reign. But there is no place that he says that there is time set aside to have the judgment seat of Christ. And I believe that's where the rapture takes place in that last 3.5 years. That gives us time while we're in heaven, because see, the judgment seat of Christ is for saved people. And we won't have time to do that then, while that last 3.5 years is going on. There's no other time, when you read all through Revelation, there's no other time that the judgment seat of Christ is mentioned, because after the great white throne judgment,
you're ushered into the 1,000-year reign. Says nothing whatsoever about the judgment seat of Christ when that's going to be. Or the marriage supper of the Lamb. There's two things there that we're going to be part of, but it never mentions them again, given a time frame. And I truly, in my heart, believe that the marriage supper of the Lamb and the judgment seat of Christ will be done in heaven during that last 3.5 years while we're gone. Does that make sense? Because those two things are going to happen. And the Bible will tell us everything that's going to happen, all through Armageddon, and then the great white throne judgment when people are, the resurrection, going into everything, but it never mentions doing the marriage supper of the Lamb or the judgment seat of Christ during that time. It does the great white throne judgment, but not them. And that's the only time that those things looks to me like can be done.
Because I'm with you on this. If the rapture were post-tribulation, there is not enough time in order to do, because immediately after the tribulation is the millennial reign.
Right.
So there is no
No.
time set apart.
No.
If that's the case after the tribulation, there is no time set apart to do the marriage stuff.
Right.
Or to,
Right.
the judgment seat of Christ
Yeah.
or any of that. It doesn't make sense.
Right.
Time-wise.
Right.
Time-wise doesn't make sense.
Because he tells us how everything is laid out and when this is going to be, that's going to be. And if it was going to be done then, he would have mentioned that also. But those two things they're not mentioned when. And I truly believe that's one reason for the rapture, is that those things are going to be done, before the millennial reign.
Which means that if you don't get caught up in the rapture, you don't attend the marriage supper.
No. That's true. That's very true. And another reason I can't see it as being posed is just because, okay, then why have a rapture and why have a second coming too, if they're going to be right there together? That makes no sense. Because if he came after a tribulation, which he says he does, right at the very end of it, there's not a time frame in between there. He comes at the very end of it. And so then he couldn't come in the rapture, because he doesn't come all the way to earth in the rapture. The Bible says he meets us and calls us up in the air to take us, like he promised, that where I am, you may be also. There would be no time for both of them if you're going to do them at the same time, or does that make sense too? Or to me, this is just me thinking, there's just no time for those kind of things, so.
Anybody got any thoughts on that?
I've got a question.
Okay.
When Christ comes and he takes his children out of here, not all of them are going to go. Correct?
There's a lot of people that thinks not.
Right. But some Christians are going to be left. Could those be the ones that will go and witness to the Jews?
Well,
Why would they be left? It's God's promise.
Well, if you remember in Scripture, it says if there's two in the field, one will go and one will stay.
Was made, was not.
Well, how do you know that? It doesn't say that.
There's some things not always God's more.
How do you know that both of them are right? Well, I'm saying.
well,
The thing of it is, and it's in Revelation, it talks about there's a crown for those that are looking for
right.
his coming.
That love
Not
his
every
appearing.
Christian is going to be looking
No.
for his
Or
coming.
loving to see him come.
But
And
that's
those
what-
are the
that's
ones
what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
that are in heaven.
Yeah.
Those that are left,
Maybe,
they know of Christ, right?
There's a lot of people that says that. There is a,
The Bible, the way the Bible phrases it is there are those that love his appearing and are looking for
the blessed hope, looking for him. That's the reason they say we need every day to be looking and hoping that this is the day. Because the people that argue that, which I don't know, but the people that argue that say that's where like the 10 virgins come in at. That all those 10 virgins were saved. Well, it says they had oil at one time, but they didn't have. And so 5 were took. He came as a thief in the night, just like he's going to in the rapture. The 5 wasn't looking for him. And they had ran out of, oil, and they wasn't looking for him. And they wasn't really ready. They let it run out thinking, whatever. And they argue that it's going to be the same way with Christians.
So the way I take that is, the 10 were ready, they were prepared, and had the oil burning. The other 5 didn't.
Right.
They were the lukewarm Christians. They thought they were okay. They
Right.
weren't living
Right.
the way they were supposed to.
Right,
And to me, that is not a Christian at all.
right. See, that's
But
where,
they were.
at one
They
time.
were at one time,
Yep,
but they weren't living.
yep,
See, the
and that's
point
true.
I'm trying to get across.
Yeah.
Even those that are left,
Yep,
they know who Jesus is.
right,
Right.
right,
Even though they're still here.
right,
Imagine,
Now, maybe there's a reason for that, we know. And that could be possible that they're the ones that's gonna step in and say, hey, we know who Jesus Christ is.
Oh, yeah, I definitely
And it
think
could
that.
be them that's gonna bring the Jews to Jesus.
well,
They can't really know, they would be
but, because when it talks about that, it does say, that love his appearing. They're looking for that blessed hope. It's like every day. Because, and there again, another argument is that these people will say it's the people that absolutely are so wound up in the world and in their life that they're not really looking for the Lord every day. And then I think, do I really think today might be the day every day and look for that and long for that? To the point that you're not looking for it. That's not what your hope is. That's what, I don't know, but there's just so much to it. But I tell you, it bothers me sometimes when, we talk about like the 10 virgins and different things. There's a lot to that. There's a lot to that, saying that they at one time would have been ready, but it kind of like delayed, whatever, and just.
because that's the scary thing. If the Lord had come earlier, all 10 would have went.
Right, right. But then they just got kind of caught up. Mm-hmm.
Weren't interested, or they lost interest or whatever.
Yeah.
And they weren't looking anymore.
That wasn't their hope. Yeah,
And so the 5 were left. That's a scary thought.
it is.
I mean, it really is.
Yep.
The rapture and even the second coming are cornerstones of Christianity. They ought to be like key things that we teach. They really should be.
Yep.
Because that is our hope.
Right.
That's to be our hope. And if we as Christians are not looking for that, then are we even living that Christian life?
Right.
Actually.
Right.
I mean, really, truly. And, discussions like this turn people away.
Right.
They'll
Right.
get mad or whatever.
Right.
But I'm telling you, you look at the Bible, not everybody's going to heaven.
No.
And not everybody's getting caught up in the rapture.
Yep.
It's not the case. And, I'm with Dave. Imagine going to church your whole life and being left at the rapture.
Mm-hmm.
You would know immediately what happened.
Right.
You would know immediately, oh my gosh, the rapture happened. It was real. It happened, and here I'm left. I would imagine that would rekindle your faith real quick.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
So,
I'm sure that there's still gonna be, after we're gone, the ones that's left behind are gonna, do everything they can,
right.
To make it right. Doesn't it say something about the only way that you're gonna make it the second time is by sacrificing?
Well,
Like Christ sacrificed his son.
Well, Revelation talks about, there's going to be a mark that people, but there's going to be people that are going to die because they refuse to take the mark.
Right.
Who would do that?
Right.
It has to be People that know.
Somebody that
Jesus.
know what's going on.
Yeah, it would have to, otherwise, who wouldn't take the mark to feed their kids?
Right, right,
Honestly.
right,
You know, but it has to be somebody that knows, like, oh my gosh, something, you know, I know about this, I've heard about this my whole life, you know, and people are gonna die for that.
yeah,
People are gonna be beheaded for that.
right,
That's what the Bible says, they're gonna have their
Beheaded.
heads cut off.
right.
And, you know, why? Why would they do that? It has to be people that know.
Right.
Yeah, that's the only thing I can.
Yep. And you was talking about that being, we need to do that because it does it when Paul, in another place where he's talking about the rapture, he said, comfort one another with these words. There's going to be a time if you will look for that, if that is your hope, if you're looking for that blessed hope, if every day that's what you're waiting on and you're watching and waiting, he says comfort one another with that word, that you're not going to have to go through that last part, which I think is the last part, because in Revelation 3 he says also, because thou hast kept the word of my patience, I will keep thee from the hour of temptation, which shall come upon the whole world to try them that dwell on the earth. There again, he's promising us, that we're not going to have to go through that last bad part. But there again, we've got to be ready. We've got to be ready for the rapture. Or, I'm almost to that point where, because he talks too much about it, that it's for those that love his appearing. Well, how can you love his appearing when you're so wrapped up in something else that you're not even looking for it or loving that time when he does come? I don't know. It's
Chapter 1, verse 10, it says, to wait for his Son from heaven, whom he raised from the dead, even Jesus, which delivered us from the wrath to come.
yeah,
Well, the children of God, because they have kept the word of his patience, will be kept from the hour of trial. That's the second coming, right? The bad.
the tribulation, yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
And somewhere here, I wrote in here, and I think the same 5:9 in Thessalonians is, God has not appointed us to wrath, but to obtain salvation
Right.
by our Lord Jesus Christ.
Right.
Doesn't the scripture teach us to look for the Lord's return, not for the tribulation?
Yeah. That blessed hope.
Yes.
Yeah, his glorious appearing.
And Christians, Christians will not be judged with the world when God pours out his wrath in the day of the Lord. I think, just from the scriptures I read in the Bible, God is going to deliver us from these tribulations.
From his wrath, I truly believe that.
Yes.
Like I said, but up until then, up until his wrath is poured out, we're going to have to face some things. And we're talking about being saved, it's going to be hard. Like you said, it's going to be hard knowing that you're going to have to give your life. You're going to have to give your life for it. And there is one place in a couple, I believe, in Revelation, it says, the rest of mankind, it is Revelation 9, and the rest of mankind who were not killed by these plagues, a bunch of stuff going on, still did not repent of the works of their hands, that they should not worship demons and idols. They would go through all these things and still would not repent. That's the reason we don't want to even go through it, because for whatever reason, it's going to be rough. Yes, there are going to be people saved, but I tell you what, it's going to be rough. It's going to be rough trying to live it.
I believe that's exactly what the Bible says when it talks about having a reprobate mind, a seared conscience,
Right.
and all of that. People, it's bizarre. There's a point in the tribulation where the last person to get saved, and then it's like, pardon the phrase, but it's like all hell breaks loose.
Yeah.
God pours out his wrath after that last. But there's this set number of people or something.
I believe there is.
And the rest will just refuse.
Yep.
They're going to have a hard heart, and it's not going to matter what they've gone through. It's not gonna matter what they're seeing.
Right.
They're just gonna refuse to repent. And the thing of it is, what you just read seems to imply that if they would repent, that they would
Yep.
be spared.
Yeah, it does.
But
It does.
they won't repent. Man, that's some people today.
But it can happen. And that's another scary thing, because there's a place also that the Lord said, I will give them over
Yeah.
to Robert. You know, after so long, just give them over to it. You know, there is not a promise that the Lord keeps dealing with us.
Right.
And well, that proves it right there. And that is a scary, scary thing, that He'll just give it over to you. You can just believe that way then. Your conscience is seared, you're just whatever. I tell you, it's, you know, we play around sometimes with stuff, and yes, the grace of God is great and it's wonderful. But I tell you, there's also another side that,
We can trample grace underfoot.
yes, we can, and the Bible even says we can that. And then it even says what is in 1 Peter that, and once you do that, there's no more grace. There's nothing else to offer. Once you trample the blood of, you know, there's no more grace to be offered. There's no more sacrifice. And it's, I tell you, yes, it's dangerous. Yes, it is. But then, go ahead.
Sorry. Before we go on, I want to make sure everybody, you mentioned this, and I think you mentioned it last week, but I want to make sure everybody understands. There are two judgments
Right,
that are going to be happening. There is the judgment seat of Christ,
right,
and then there is the great white throne judgment.
right.
They're not the same.
No, not by a long shot.
If you think they are the same, then it's real easy to get confused.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't distinguish, okay, these are different times, right?
Everybody's
These are
gonna be
different
judged.
things. Everybody gets judged,
Yep,
but the judgment seat of Christ is for those that are saved.
Right.
Actually, I guess for those that are caught up in the rapture.
right.
I'm guessing.
That's the reason I just think that's the only time that judgment seat of Christ can be done, is while we're in heaven, those
And
last
it's
few years.
not judgment in the sense of
Whether
do you
you're
go
saved or
to
lost.
heaven or hell.
Right.
It's your works
Right.
are judged.
Right,
And, I mean, the Bible talks about how we're going to receive crowns
right,
and all this stuff. Of course, the Bible also says we're just going to throw our crowns at the only one that's
yeah,
actually worthy. But then there's also going to be a great white throne judgment where the whole world
right,
stands before.
Right.
And God's going to look through and
Right.
see if their name
right.
is found
Right.
in the Lamb's Book of Life.
Even, it says even hell will give up those people. The sea will give, because even though they're lost and they're going to be eternal, it's not like giving them a second chance. It's just that you have got to be judged. The Lord is a just God, and He has to show why you're under the penalty you're under, you know. And so everybody's going to be judged. Everybody's going to know exactly why you didn't make it or why you didn't whatever. And so, yeah, you're right. They're two separate ones. But everybody, every one of us. And that's the reason He says, you know, we need to stay focused day in, day out, looking for that appearing, that we will not be ashamed. You know, in other words, you know, because we probably will be, you know, that, but, you know, it's,
Imagine standing next to someone like Polycarp,
yep,
who was literally martyred, burned alive. The fire wouldn't kill him, so they finally just killed him with a sword. But imagine standing beside him as you're being judged.
right,
I mean, we can't get to church on a Sunday morning.
right, right. And we're going to give account for that. I
We
mean,
will give an account for that. When we choose to go to Walmart instead of being in God's house.
yeah, yeah,
You know, and I'm not saying we have to be in church every single time the doors are open. But some of us make excuses not to be in the house of God. And I just wonder, I mean, when we're standing there, you know, and it may not be the difference between heaven and hell, but I don't want to stand next to Polycarp. I don't want to stand next to Tim Dale.
mm-hmm,
These great martyrs of the faith
Yeah.
that put everything into the cause of Christ.
Right,
And here I am standing next to them, and I couldn't even be bothered to come to church.
right,
They died so that we could come to church.
right,
Without Tyndale, we wouldn't have a Bible. guys.
right. Or the people in these other countries, even today, every day, there are thousands of people dying for Christianity. And we just go about our way. And I say this all the time. We are so blessed that we're blinded.
Yeah.
We are just absolutely blinded. And I think we're going to give account for that. The Lord did not love us more than he did these other people in these other countries that's having to die for the faith. He did not. For whatever reason he seen fit for us to live in a country, and this whole country I know was made just to bless other people. It is to spread the gospel. It is, you know, when we think, well, we've got more money, we got whatever, the money wasn't for us. Like I said, he does not love us more than he does them. He blesses us to bless people in the world. And we don't do that. We do not do that. We are selfish, we are whatever. And we're going to have to give account for that too. And so we just, I don't know, like I said, we're just so self-absorbed, and it's easy to be in this country and not think that every day there are thousands. You know, what must he think about us? We probably don't even pray for those people every day, you know, and then here we are just all about us. I mean, yeah, we'll give account for a whole lot of stuff.
You know, we are still a part of that Great Commission.
Yes.
Every one of us are a part of that Great Commission. I seen a statistic that said something like 70% of Christians don't even know what the Great Commission is. They could not tell you what it. I hope everybody in here knows what the Great Commission is. Go ye into all the world.
And that's every one of us.
Every one of us, we are to go out into the world, and we're to share the gospel. We're not to go out and make ourselves feel better because we help the homeless.
Right, right,
That's a good deed, but that's not sharing the gospel.
right,
Inviting someone to church is a good thing, but it's not sharing the gospel.
right,
There's a difference between inviting somebody to church and actually telling them, hey, Jesus loves you.
right,
I seen somebody just put on Facebook, I think just yesterday or the day before, he said he was, I think at a gas station and seen somebody pumping gas, and he went up to him and said, hey, what do you know about Jesus? And the person looked at him and said, well, not much. And he said, the guy posted said, we think everybody knows everything about Jesus, but plenty of people don't have a clue about
no,
it.
even in this country,
Because Christians aren't doing their job.
no,
We're not going out into the world.
right,
That is the great commitment. That is the one thing Christ left us to do.
right, right,
That was above everything else. He said, go ye unto all the world.
right,
And we can't talk to our neighbors.
right. And we are so blessed with stuff that we have the opportunity to do it. And this country of all people, is not. And I guess that's what gets me about people like the prosperity gospel. You know, get, you know, everything. It's not about us. I don't care how you look about it. The gospel is not get what you can get and the Lord's going to bless you. It is not. I mean, yes, he's going to take care of our needs, and yes, he's going to, but that is not what he told us to do. There again, we become self-absorbed. He blessed us. I don't care if it's money, time, I don't care what it is, to bless other people, not for us to heap more stuff upon ourselves. And we'll give account for that. I mean, I know we will. I know we will. But you were talking about who will preach. Well, on in here too, and there again, it's within that first 3.5 years. The Lord is going to seal 144,000 Jews. They are to go out, because there again, we've always in the back of our mind got to remember who is the tribulation for. The Israelites. It's to bring them back to Him. The Gentile age, the church age is over. You know, that's been fulfilled. It's all focused on them then. And so he seals those to go and do it that first 3.5 years. And that's another thing. There will also be 2 witnesses that comes back. And I'm sure, and there again, you know, all this stuff is just more and more teaching. But those 2 witnesses also will do miracles, show wonders, and preach and all of that. And then the Antichrist kills them at the very beginning. And then they're raised from the dead and all that. But there again, they've got those people. They've got the 2 witnesses, and they've got the 144,000, let alone anybody else that's going on. The Lord does that. And that's another reason I think that's when the church age ends and that we are raptured at the end of the 3.5 years, is because even the 2 witnesses and the 144,000 are not in that last 3.5 years. And I'm almost believe that as you read it, and like I said, I'd have to get into a whole lot of other stuff, but it's almost like maybe the rapture happens and then that's when everybody's took up, maybe even the 144,000. You know, you just don't know, but I think the church age ends then, but during that 3.5 years, he's had all those people to try to get people ready, and they still won't have it. The Antichrist still comes in and, you know, they're still not saved. But he does everything he can do. And another thing that makes me think that there's not going to be anybody here and that the rapture has happened that after that 3.5 years and the 2 witnesses are gone, the 144,000 is gone, is because during that last 3.5, the Lord doesn't use people to preach the gospel anymore. Like he did raising witnesses and the 2 witnesses of the 144,000. They're all gone. His says he sends angels, if you'll notice. And so there's really nobody there to preach the gospel. And you have to think, okay, why? It's because we're gone. And he's already tried with the ones that he has sealed during that first 3.5 years. But during these last, if you'll go back and read those last 3.5 years, he sends angels to do it. And even at that, though, it says they still will not repent. And so it's going to be very, very hard for anybody to be saved during that last 3.5 years. And so with him using angels, you know, to say, because one of the angels goes through and says, woe be to anybody that takes the mark. You know, he's still trying to tell them. But yet they've got to the place where it's just, you know, it's too hard. And that's, you know, that's another reason. But yeah, there will be people there. He's going to call those people, the 144,000, 2 witnesses, and who else. But that's only for a short time. Then they're gone. And I truly believe we're all gone at that time.
What do you say to people that believe that they would surely see the Antichrist? And, you know, they're not worried about the rapture because surely we would know, we would see what's going on. What do you say to something like that?
I used to think that too. I used to think, well, how in the world can anybody be deceived? Because surely some beast that was doing all that. Well, we've got to go back to what we said last week. We look at things through the way it was written. And the Antichrist is called the beast too. And you know, you would have thought, well, some kind of beast. No, it is a man. It is, all of this is political. I mean, even the Battle of Armageddon is these countries that's going to be in war. And it's so strange because all those countries are the countries that's in war now over there. I mean, Iran, Iraq, it amazes me how the last few years the Lord has just brought all this stuff together, and that's exactly where all that's going to happen. But it's going to come, it's like anything. You know, things come so subtle that people just, you get used to it and you think, you know, and you don't realize what's going on because you're looking for something major to say, oh my gosh, that must be the Antichrist. And it's not going to be like that. It's going to be a man that's political in some way that absolutely just ushers in, and they think he's some kind of hero. It's just going to be, you're not going to know it. If you don't know, and that's the reason he says you need to know the stuff that you won't be deceived. But he gives us clues, and he gives us, you know, what's going on and what he will do, that you know that's who it is.
Jesus even said that the elect would be deceived if possible.
Yes, even the church would be deceived if not possible. That's the reason we've got to know this stuff. Because he did. He said even if it was possible, even the elect would be deceived. It's that subtle, and it's just so, because it's already what's going on, in the world. And so you just think, it's another day of war, it's another day of whatever, it's another person that, no, it's just going to come in, and you're going to be in it and not even know it. Until he starts doing all this stuff, and then it might, bring him in. Because when you read Revelation, up until, oh my goodness, some stuff even 20, 30 years ago, that stuff seemed impossible, and it was impossible. I mean, just, like the two witnesses I was talking about. It says they'll die, and they'll lay in the street, and the whole world will see them. Well, just up until a few years ago, how was that even possible? You just had to take it at faith and think, seriously, how's everybody going to see them? Well, you can now. Through satellites, you can. There is so much that has happened within the last, well, it all started when Israel became a nation again. Honestly, it did. Up until then, thousands of years, nothing had changed. And then everything in Revelation and Daniel, the whole Bible, is now possible. It is now possible. Just in the time that we have lived. And everybody else up until then just had to take it on faith because it was just craziness. But there again, with us living in it, with us knowing and seeing it fulfilled, there's still people that don't. You asked how can the Antichrist come and people not know it? The same way this stuff's being fulfilled right now, right before our eyes, and people don't see it.
Most Christians have no interest in it.
Yep. And so it just sneaks up. It's the same way. It happens the same way, I'm telling you. But
I got a friend that rolls his eyes every time you start mentioning end times. And he's a Christian, or says that he is. Used to be a preacher. But when you start talking about end times, you go, oh yeah, whatever. We've been saying that forever. And I'm thinking, dude, you're exactly who Jesus was talking about.
When he
that
said,
you need to not be deceived.
yeah. But there again, okay, and that's true. Like I said, all those thousands of years, even up until our lifetime, yeah, they did keep saying it. And there again, they were talking about the rapture because there was no time frame for the rapture. That could have happened anytime. But the second coming, but now we see all of this stuff. We know it is, if you know the Bible. And if you know, it's just scary.
I know the Bible says that no one knows the day,
Right.
the hour. But Jesus did say we can look and see the season.
Right.
We can look and see what season we're in.
Right. And what years, he even says that generation will not pass. And I think the reason he said that is because he does extend grace. I believe we're living in grace right now. I truly believe that probably all of this would have done started a few years ago. I believe that with all my heart. And I truly believe the Lord has extended grace for a little while longer. And I believe that's the reason Jesus said not the exact hour or day, because he knew that the Lord would try with everything in him. Even like I said, during the tribulation, he keeps trying. But I truly believe that. And I believe, too, he says at the end of tribulation, when he does come back, if he didn't come at that time, and didn't shorten the day, that there would be no flesh saved. So even the tribulation will probably no doubt be that whole 3.5 years. And so you can't be exact, but you know when it's your lifetime. And yeah, it's because with everything in him, he tries to extend grace, even if it's time. But we're right there. Let me just read this real quick, and some of the things that, and you can look these up, there's verses, but still. The rapture of the church occurs before the tribulation, and there again, the verses we've read, and there's some more. The second coming of Christ happens after the tribulation. Do you see about what we said, how that happens? And in the rapture, Jesus comes for the saints, and that's in 1 Thessalonians. But in the second coming, it says that Christ comes with his saints. We come back with him. And then in the rapture, Christ takes the saints to heaven. In the second coming, he brings the saints back, and we live here on earth through the 1,000-year reign. I mean, there's verses here that tells you they're completely separate events. And in the rapture, he returns just in the clouds. In the second coming, he actually comes to the earth. He comes back to Israel on the Mount of Olives. In the rapture, nobody sees him but the saints. And the second coming, it says every eye will see him. And the rapture is called the blessed hope. It is a hope. The second coming is actually called the great day of his wrath. You know, completely separate events, completely separate things happen. Let me just read this and I'll quit real quick. Talking about him coming back at the second coming, it tells us where he left from the Mount of Olives. And if you'll remember, the angels told the disciples, this same Jesus that you see go away will come in like manner as you have seen him come. And he actually does. Let's see, it says that, and his feet shall stand on that day upon the Mount of Olives, which is before Jerusalem on the east, and the Mount of Olives that cleave in the midst thereof toward the east. In other words, it splits. The Mount of Olives splits like an earthquake when he stands on it. And there shall be a very great valley, and half of the mountain shall remove toward the earth, and half of it toward the south. There is today that there is like fault lines right in that, like it is ready to be split. You know, just like they said, just like kind of fingering off in that very place that it's going to happen. And it also says that in Zechariah, it says that under his feet where that splits, there is an underground water source that erupts, half of it going upward to the Mediterranean Sea and half of it to the Dead Sea. And there again, the Dead Sea is another prophecy that has always been the Dead Sea, nothing could grow, whatever, and he says that in the last days it will. That is happening too. After all these thousands of years, I'm telling you, it's amazing when you get in here and just little things that absolutely are happening. But guess what they found not too long ago? There is a huge underground water system under there, just like the Bible says is going to happen. I mean, it is amazing. I mean, you can just read this and think, oh my God. But there again, every bit of this stuff has happened just since, like I said, our lifetime, after Israel, which is the first big sign that when he would bring them back after 2,000 years, that would be the sign of that generation that would not pass. So, okay, I hope it made somewhat sense. So, anybody got anything else to say?
Questions, comments?
I think we'll go from, you agree that there's a difference between the seals and like then where the trumpets start to sound.
Yeah.
Because here in the sixth seal it says, and I beheld, when he had opened the sixth seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake, and the sun was him black as type of all his hair, and then he came his blood. And the stars in heaven fell into the earth as a pig has in her untimely pigs, when she is shaken of her by the wind. And the heavens departed as a scroll. The words there, heaven departed, means that the sky split apart. I think that is when the rapture actually takes
And it could
place.
be.
And it says, and every mountain and every island was moved into place. And the same thing happened when Jesus died on the cross.
Yeah.
And then it goes on into verse 17 or 16, and it says, you know, they're asking the rocks and everything they're hiding in the caves. And 16 says the mountains and, well, they're hiding from the wrath of the Lamb. And 17 says, for the great day of the wrath is come. So I think immediately, as soon as the sky split apart, and that's the rapture,
Yep.
then immediately the wrath takes place. And then you go to the seventh seal there,
And there's silence.
there's silence for a half an hour.
Right. Yeah, I believe that. And when I say the last 3.5 years when the Antichrist shows himself, like she's talking about there, that 6th and 7th seal is what is the last two leading up to that last part of the 3.5 years. Does that make sense? And so at the sixth seal, we're getting really, really close to when the Antichrist starts, whatever, that last 3.5 years. But that sixth seal could, like you said, it's so close to that it could absolutely be that. Because then after that, the seventh seal is silence in heaven. And when you think about that, that's such a weird thing because heaven is never silent. There's continuous angels praising him, whatever. But something is happening and I think it's where they see what's about to happen on earth, the last 3.5 years, that it is so bad that they're just in silence to watch. Because after that seventh seal then, it ushers in that last 3.5 years. But that could very well be in that sixth seal because that sixth seal is close enough to the end of that 3.5 years that, yeah.
So what would a half an hour be if the days of 1,000?
I don't know, I was going to figure that out, and I thought, ooh, okay. But that is just so wild to me to think that whatever they see is about to happen in that last seal, that right after that sixth seal, and there again, it may have been the rapture. That might have been one thing that they're thinking, gosh, that happened, and now look what's going to come on the earth. That it is just so awful. Because he says that it will be a time that never has been and never will be again. It will be so bad. And so I think they're just in awe. They're just in kind of, I don't know, just shock or something. I don't know. But yeah, that is true. And that,
One of the things that's interesting to think about that too is if there's silence in heaven, then that probably means no one's getting saved.
right,
Because every time someone
Right.
gets saved, there's rejoicing.
Right. right, it's scary. It's
So
scary.
if there's complete silence, that's not rejoicing.
No, no. But yeah, that could very well be. Like you said, that the sixth seal, the rapture and all of that, leading into that seventh, which is the silence, and them sitting there watching what's about to unfold. And then it be, I tell you, we're just right there, and it just, like we was talking about the treaty last week, I tell you, there again, we just get so, day after day after day, that happens and that happens and that happens, that we just don't see it. We just don't see the big picture.
Anybody else?
Okay. But honestly, every day, we need to be looking because, and it doesn't, and I say it don't matter because it really don't, because it's going to happen. But okay, what if it is before the tribulation? We're looking at any day, the rapture, any day now. Especially with what we know is happening, and
If you don't pay attention to what's going on in the Middle East, I highly encourage you.
yeah, because you're going to miss it.
Yeah.
Because I'm telling you,
Because that's where everything revolves around.
it is. Israel is the
We
center
come to believe that it revolves
around us.
America.
Yeah,
But
no,
the reality of it is the book of Revelation, everything in the book of Revelation revolves around the Middle East.
yep, it does.
And so it's on their time frame, not on ours. Just because we don't see people being beheaded over here
Right.
doesn't mean that the tribulation hasn't even, started. I mean,
Already started.
Yeah.
See, that's the way I think. I think with everything in place and everything that has happened up to now, are we already slipping into it? And we don't even recognize it? Because honestly, if you don't know it and you don't watch, it'd be easy to do.
I mean, as far as I can tell, the only thing we're missing is the peace treaty.
Right, that's what I said last week. And to think that peace treaty, there is a peace treaty in place right now that Trump is trying to get signed, and he said it would be April before Netanyahu and all that stuff, his elections were over, that they could do it. But I'm telling you, what he's got in that peace treaty is exactly what is needed for the rest of that to take place, for the temple to be built again, for them to be given back you know, all of Jerusalem, just different things. It's in that treaty that's already out there to be signed. And the way I can figure it is once that, if that is it, if it's not, it's sure a precursor to it. I mean, it's ready to, you know, that's when the 7 years starts. I mean, think about that. That's when the 7 year tribulation is, when that treaty is signed. I tell you, we talk about it and we think, but do we really realize where we are?
We sound like a bunch of crazy people.
Yeah,
I mean, honestly, Christians believe crazy stuff. You know, we believe that the world's literally going to like end.
this
in a little
age,
bit.
yeah.
And our Savior that died and was buried is going to come again on a white horse for us.
Right.
I mean, but it's not crazy. It's literally what the Bible says.
Right.
And
we've got to the point where we think mankind is so above that,
Yeah.
that we're so smart, when in all reality we're nothing. We don't have a clue. Like I said, his ways are far beyond our ways, but yet we think we've evolved somehow that stuff's crazy. I don't know. But, well, and I'm sure they said the same thing to Noah. Seriously, Noah, it's not rain. What is rain? You know, and the Lord has told you. I mean, yeah, Christians do, in the sight of the world, are crazy people. But we've got everything to prove it. But you were talking about, like, you know, who wouldn't know what the beast is? Because he even goes to the temple saying, you know, and I believe this too, going back to when the rapture is. Like Miranda was saying, maybe the 6th seal going into the 7th, and then right there at the beginning of 3.5 years. Well, something has to happen that the Antichrist comes in and people accept him. You know, something major has chaos or something. And it could very well be that the rapture has happened, people are gone, and he comes in and says, I'll take care of all of this. And first thing we've got to do is get rid of the Jews. Kind of like Hitler did. There again, who would have ever thought that? But there has to be something going on in the world that he's already there, but he comes in and says, I can take care of all of this. And they believe him. And to the point that he goes in the temple and proclaims himself to be God, you know, and I tell you one more thing, I'm sorry I'm keeping this, that I think too, I think the Muslims has a very, very big role in it. Because if you know anything about Muslim faith, they believe there is an Antichrist coming. They believe that their Messiah is coming. They believe all of this stuff. They even believe that Jesus is coming back, but he's going to come back and say, I was wrong and forgive me and all this stuff. It's crazy what they believe, but I tell you, they believe in the end time to the point they got the same players in that we do. But I truly believe, and there again, I truly believe that the false prophet and the Antichrist will revolve somehow around the Muslim faith. And they would accept him as being God. You know, because they don't believe that Jesus was the Son of God. And they truly believe that their Messiah is going to come at that time. I'll tell you, and see, that's already over there. And it talks about beheading people. And who would think about that now, you know, when you could just kill them, just bomb them, just do whatever. But Revelation says that the Christian martyrs would be beheaded. And
who's the ones?
Muslims.
Beheading?
Right. I truly believe that. It's amazing when you see what they believe and how their end time lines up with ours, and they're actually praying for their Mahdi to come now. I'm telling you, it could very well be that. And then people would accept that. They would believe that. So, I don't know.